Hey everybody, what's up from Roll, Minnesota, your state of skate. Hey, I'm Butch Lehman, and today we're in for another episode of Rolling Reactions. Today's episode features one of the greatest stunt skaters of all time, and is actually my favorite section ever. In fact, when I go to show skating to people that are non-bladers and give them a feel for what blading is all about, this is the section I turn to. I turn to Pat Lennen. Now, in particular, we'll take a look back at some of his various sections and video parts. In particular, we'll start out with my personal favorite one, and that's his profile in Leading the Blind, one of the 4x4 videos. After that, we'll rewind the clock a little bit to Them Apples, which I believe came out before 4x4's Leading the Blind. And then lastly, we'll take the clock forward into what I think was one of his latest sections, or at least one of the most recent ones that I've seen, and that's his section in Drip Drop. All three of them are absolute bangers, and if there's one thing that's certain, nobody approached skating with sort of the relentless, fearless approach that Pat Lennen did. You guys aren't going to want to miss this one. This one is good. I promise. Let's check it out. All right, guys, we'll start out with 4x4's Leading the Blind, and I would argue this is one of the best and most iconic skate videos ever made. This whole video was just one hammer section after another with a star-studded lineup of skaters, and Pat is no exception. He's bringing the stunts to the table, and pretty much every clip here is just mind-bogglingly dangerous. Like, here he's coming in with unbelievable speed with a massive wall ride over the chain. That could go wrong really quickly. This is my home park in Hopkins, Minnesota, the Overpass skate park. You guys have seen it on this channel before. Love that one. And I actually got to see that trick go down in person, so that was pretty cool. You're going to see a lot of big transfers, big gaps, tons of speed pulling in. And like that, I don't know how we could keep that kind of speed to get up that and go over the rail with a fakie 360. Very difficult to do trick. Big bio flip. I mean, Pat is an absolute legend of skating, and this section, like I said, it's my personal favorite, so pardon me if I fanboy out a little bit over this one. Going in with the in-spin topsoul to over the fence. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was like zero run-up going into that trick. Pat definitely enjoys jumping over stuff. You get the big fakie 720 over this gap. And this is another really iconic trick, going through the hole. I think Alex Broskow did this gap as well, if I'm not mistaken. Drop kink. To me, this video is like a perfect representation of that early inline culture in the late 90s, early 2000s, when everyone was pushing the envelope to see just how big you could go, how much speed could you bring into it. And I guess like technicality and style wasn't necessarily at the forefront like they are today, but man, was this a time of progression for inline skating. And in large part due to sections like this with Pat just going hammers. Huge bio over the gap on that one. This to me is on my list of most iconic tricks ever done, and that to me is one of the most terrifying things ever. Not a lot of headroom to get through that gap, and since you're dropping down through the construction area, not only do you have to get out, but you got to watch the head too, so a lot happening in that clip. A little bit of foreshadowing here to the last trick of the video. Massive out ledge. I believe that one's in Minneapolis, so from my home area. And when you see it in person, it is so much scarier. If you guys have been skating for a while, you know how that goes. Whenever you see something on camera, you always feel like, oh, that doesn't look so bad, until you actually arrive in person, and then you get a whole new level of respect for the tricks that have been done in those places. This is another trick that a lot of people remember from Pat. That's a fakie backflip over the stairs. Since this video came out, there are a number of people that have done them. One that comes to mind is, I believe, David Sizemore was really good at the fakie backflips. Going down the curved drop ledge. That is something you don't see very often, are drop ledges, let alone curved ones. This is the type of skating that I just really love to watch because you don't really know what's going to happen next. Like, we get the 450 cess slide going up over the gap. Another curved drop ledge. Man, I bet that would be hard to hold as well, and it almost looked like he had to come off early in order to have the rollaway. That ledge is huge. All right, continuing our Pat Lennen tour of destruction, we have Them Apples. And this is a video that I haven't seen that often, and I think I own this one. And you guys will have to let me know down in the comments. I'm not sure, but I do know there was a video titled The Apple That Fell Far from the Tree. I'm not sure if those two videos are related, if one is like a sequel, if they're even the same skaters and producer. I just always assumed, since they have apples in the title, that, you know, they were together as a series. I'll have to check that one out. Well, look at this makeshift setup, the massive wall ride and landing back into that transition. I don't know what they're to call that, park skating or street skating. With Pat, you get kind of a combination of the two. He's rocking those K2, I think that was the Nemesis skate. If you guys remember back to the late 90s, early 2000s, at least from what I recall, everybody and their brother at school talked about K2s. Like, K2s were the skates you needed to have if you wanted to be taken seriously with blading. By the way, loving that vertical soul grind. Really cool trick. When I think of that one, I generally think of Brian Shima, and he's another skater that I have a lot of respect for. Pulling in off the car to get the speed. That is something you'll always see from Pat. Just comprehend how dangerous that was, landing onto the electrical box with that kind of speed. You miss a foot, maybe don't jump far enough and you clip. Just nothing good could come of that. There's a long hold, stay on it. I don't know if you saw the branch, but the branch brushed him and he was still able to keep the balance. There's another one from Pat that you see in a couple of different clips. He has like that dark side cess slide topsoul where he'll start on one side and slowly cess slide into the dark side. Pretty cool. I've seen a number of skaters do it, but Pat is one of the best. I also think of a guy like Tree right now, who's just absolutely killing it with the cess slides. Big 540 coming out of the dumpster. Once again, we're bringing in a lot of speed. The down ledge. I think of down ledges like that, my mind goes to Billy O'Neill, one of the best to do it. Big 450 off that ledge. Some of these spots look like just to get to them would be very difficult, and you'll see them create some obstacles and use signs and various forms of ramps for transitions. A lot of gaps. Big double set there. Speaking of ramps, how cool would it be to make like a giant kicker out of a dumpster like that? Or skating a big dirt ramp like that. I don't know if he just showed up at a BMX contest and was like, all right, I'm skating. And to finish things off, the big drop kink rail. Massive. He's really holding into it because those front side grinds like front Royale, much more difficult to hold around a curve than backside Royale. Little fun fact. All right, lastly, we'll finish things off with Drip Drop, which is another iconic skate video. One of the best, in my opinion. It's another video that has a star-studded cast to it. It's easy for any individual to be overlooked in this video as a whole. When you see somebody like Pat Lennen skate with the level of intensity, speed, just dynamic range and stunt ability, it makes for some really entertaining viewing, in my personal opinion. And starting things off a little bit differently here, we've got a skate park clip with a big straight air over the quarter pipe. And, you know, I know it's taboo sometimes to put skate park clips into street videos, but as somebody that really enjoys skating park myself, I think it's totally acceptable, especially if you can bring a certain level of difficulty or amplitude to it, where it's not just the type of trick people would expect to see in a typical park edit. Speaking of amplitude, a lot of jumping over cars for Pat Lennen. That is one of the things that he is well known to do, and I think we'll see some of that in this section, if my mind recalls correctly. Starting out though, we're jumping over the rail, and to me, some of those are the most difficult and dangerous looking tricks, because the thought of clipping on something like that, I mean, it would be hard for me not to have that in my mind of what would happen if you didn't quite get over the obstacle you were jumping. So it does take a lot of confidence in oneself. And I like this line that he put together here. They've got their homemade ramps with like hay bales and putting together a really solid line too, like the level of consistency here, especially since a lot of these obstacles are homemade, which adds to the element of difficulty. Skating through the grass and dropping in. I really like that setup. Like, that just looks fun to me. Get a little makeshift quarter pipe and then an actual pipe to grind on. Big 360. You don't see a lot of forward 360s, especially in this era of blading. It was almost always 180, 540. Sometimes, when you're lucky, you get the fakey 720s. And then sometimes you even get those really stylish zero spins. Not a lot of forward tricks, though. That was an architectural wonder. That spot looked really fun. Got another big kink rail. I think Chris Farmer would love this spot. I don't know, guys. How many disasters can one man do? I would be curious, too, to see, like, the health record of Pat to see if he ever had any major injuries. With the level that he skates at and the type of skating he does, I feel like very high susceptibility to some pretty serious injuries. Pulling behind the car, get a big wall ride again. Love the mute grab. Mute grab's my personal favorite grab to do when I'm out skating. I enjoy a good stale fish. I don't do them particularly well, but when somebody does, that's a really stylish one. And then you can't go wrong with the classic Luke hang. Wonder where we're at in this video. That looked pretty steep. Maybe San Francisco. Going up, grinding the fence. Look how big that drop is over the side, too. And since he was going up, most of his momentum was already gone, so he's basically just absorbing all of that shock right into his heels. Hopefully he had some good shock absorbers. Again, we get the fakie backflip from Pat. One of the things he's well known for. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Rolling Reactions featuring Pat Lennen. Now, I know I've said this before, but when it comes to skating, my taste, my preference is definitely in the old school. I love the stunt style of skating, the high-intensity blading. It just makes me feel back at home with when I originally started. Now, that's not to take anything away from the more technical style of blading that we see emerging and evolving today. I love that as well, but there'll always be a special place in my heart for guys like Pat Lennen. So you guys will have to let me know what you think of Pat skating. Wherever you're at, Pat, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're still out there on the blades, at least enjoying yourself, if not progressing the sport in whatever way you can. Anyway, guys, I'm Butch Lehman of Roll, Minnesota, reminding you to stay safe, stay healthy, and get out there and do some rollerblading. We'll see y'all with the next video. Until then, peace, everybody.